They are talking about how your voice sounds. Not the words you are saying, not the content, not the carefully crafted sentences you rehearse in your head before you speak. No, they are talking about the actual texture, the frequency, the way your voice seems to reach into them and pull something loose that they forgot. They forgot they were holding onto. It's unusual, isn't it? Because you didn't do anything special. You just opened your mouth and something came out that wasn't supposed to exist. And that's what they cannot stop discussing, thinking, what keeps them up at night, wondering what makes them replay their recording in their mind just to make sure they heard right. This whole thing started innocently enough. You were in a meeting, nothing important, just one of those Friday afternoon sessions where everyone's half watching the clock and waiting for the caffeine to wear off. You said something about the quarterly projections. Total mundane stuff. The kind of information that usually evaporates from people's memories the second it enters their ears. But then you paused. You added a small comment about how the team had been working hard and how you noticed that people were showing up even when they didn't have to. You said it looked like something real was happening there. And that's when it happened. That's when the room changed. People stopped typing, stopped checking their phones. One woman at the end of the table, she actually put her hand to her chest like she was physically feeling something. The guy next to her tilted his head unblinking. For maybe 6 seconds, nobody breathed. Nobody. Then you continued talking like nothing had happened. Like you hadn't just done something there to the atmosphere itself. What they heard that day, what they still cannot articulate when they try to describe it later, is something that shouldn't make sense. Your voice carried something beyond its normal frequencies. It carried permission to feel, permission to stop pretending, permission to be exactly where they were without needing to escape it. You didn't announce that you were giving them permission. You didn't hand out little cards that said you are allowed to exist now. You just spoke, and something in the sound itself bypassed their defenses. Now let's be real here. You have experienced the opposite of this. You have been in conversations where your voice seemed to disappear into the room, absorbed by other people's distractions, their phones, their wandering attention. You have spoken in meetings where you could literally feel people's energy draining away as you talked. You have left those rooms wondering if you had any impact at all. You've come home and replayed your words in your head, cringing at the sound of your own voice, wishing you could have said it differently, more confidently, with more authority. You have felt that sinking realization that you were speaking, but nobody was hearing. So how would it become this? How did something that once felt so invisible, so ineffective, transform into a frequency that actually hypnotize people when they encounter it? This isn't this isn't some influencer technique or a sale pitch wrapped in spiritual language. This is the actual mechanics of how your voice operates now. And if you don't understand it, you might accidentally use it in ways that feel like you are manipulating people, when that's absolutely not what's happening. Absolutely not. Let's look at that. Changed first. At some point, you stopped trying to control your voice. Yeah, you stopped monitoring every word, stopped filtering every sentence through a mental checklist, or whether it sounded smart enough, professional enough, convincing enough. That's when it shifted, because control creates tension. Tension creates constriction. Constriction changes the frequency of your voice until it becomes something that pushes people away without you even realizing it. When you stop controlling, something else entered. And this is the part that's hard to describe, the part that makes people uncomfortable because it sounds like something from a movie. But you started speaking from a place you couldn't name, not from your ego, not from your self-image, not from the collection of beliefs you have accumulated about who you should be and how you should sound. You started speaking from the place beneath all of that, the place that existed before you learned to doubt yourself. And that's the sound of, that's the sound. That's the sound, that's the unusual quality they are talking about. It's not that your voice changed pitch, yeah. Not that you started using fancy vocabulary. Not that you became more articulate. It's that people who hear you now receive something through their ears that goes straight past their brain and lands somewhere deeper. Think about the last time you were in a conversation where the other person was clearly pretending. You know what that sounds like. There is thinness of it to it, a quality that makes your own energy pull back, makes you feel like you are interacting with a social mask rather than a human being. And then think about the times when someone spoke to you and it didn't matter what they were saying. You just wanted them to keep talking because something about their voice, energy made you feel calm, made you feel seen, made you feel like the noise in your head could finally quiet down for a moment. That's what you are doing to people now. And they don't know how to process it because it's so rare in this world where everything is increasingly filtered, compressed, optimized for maximum attention with minimum substance. You might be wondering why it's so unusual. Why do people comment on it? Why does it stand out? It stands out because most people have learned to speak from a place of lack. They speak to prove something, to defend something, to impress, to reassure themselves that they matter. There is a desperation in that kind of speaking that you can feel. You can feel, even if you cannot name it. It's like the voice. The voice is constantly asking for validation, constantly checking if you are still listening, constantly afraid that if it sounds performing, you will stop paying attention. But your voice, your beautiful voice, doesn't do that. It doesn't beg, it doesn't push, it doesn't try to capture attention. It simply exists. And in its existence, it offers something to whoever is listening. It doesn't need them to respond a certain way. It doesn't need them to validate anything. It's just present. And that presence is precisely what makes it so effective. There is a reason people tell you things. There is a reason strangers open up to you. There is a reason people you barely know start sharing their deepest uncertainties, their secret hopes, the things they have never said aloud to anyone. It's not that you are asking them to. It's not that you have mastered some technique of emotional extraction. It's that your voice creates a space where it feels safe to be real. And once people experience that, once they feel what it's like to be heard without judgment, they cannot help but want more of it. Think about this in your daily life. When you are at work and you give feedback to a colleague, have you noticed how differently they receive it compared to when someone else says the same thing? Have you noticed how they don't get defensive, how they actually listen instead of preparing their speech while you're still talking? That's not because you are more diplomatic. That's because your voice is delivering something alongside the content, something that says you are on their side. You are not threatening them. You are just speaking truth. Because truth is what they need. Or think about your relationships. Think about the conversations where you have been able to say something difficult, something that could have caused conflict, and the other person just received it. They didn't attack, they didn't withdraw, they just sat with it and let it land. And then something shifted between you, something deepened. That's the power of your voice operating from the right place. But here is something important to understand. That doesn't mean you are always successful. No. There will still be people who don't hear you. There will still be situations where your voice, your words don't land. Because the other person has to be ready to receive what you are offering. You cannot hypnotize someone who is determined to stay asleep. You can only create the conditions where they might choose to wake up. This is why some people seem almost frightened by you, why they might pull back or become defensive or even hostile. Your voice is holding up a mirror to something they are not ready to see. That's why they are threatened. It's showing them the possibility of being real, of dropping their masks, and that can feel threatening to someone who's built their entire identity around hiding. You don't have to take that personally. No, it's not about you. It's about what you represent to them. That's it. But let's go deeper into the unthinkable part. The part that makes this whole thing feel almost unreal. Your voice has already done something that you might not even realize. It has already started to create change in people without them understanding how or why. You have had conversations where the other person walked away with a new perspective, a new energy, a renewed sense of hope. They might not remember exactly what you said. They just remember how they felt when you were speaking. And that feeling has a persistence to it. It stays with them. I've seen this happen in people's lives over and over. Someone who stumbled into this quality in their voice, who didn't understand it, who sometimes even felt uncomfortable with how people responded to them. They'd feel this sense of responsibility, this weight of knowing that their voice was affecting people in ways they couldn't control. And sometimes they'd try to pull back, try to make themselves smaller, try to speak more normally so people would stop acting so differently around them. But that's not how it works. You cannot ungive something that's already been given. You cannot pretend you don't have the ability to touch people's deeper levels. Yeah. What you can do is just to learn how to use it intentionally, not manipulatively, not to get something from people, but to serve something true, to create more of the realness that this world so desperately needs. The ancient traditions used to understand this instinctively. They knew that certain people carried a frequency that could affect others just by being in their presence, just by speaking ordinary words in an extraordinary way. They called those people healers, leaders, teachers. But they were not necessarily born with something special. Many of them were people who had been through something, people who had been broken, shattered, and rebuilt from the inside out. And that's exactly what happened to you. All the struggles you've been through, all the moments when you thought you couldn't go on, and the times when you were forced to confront things you didn't want to see about yourself, those experiences didn't destroy you, They hollowed you out in exactly the right way. They created space inside you for something else to enter, something that was always there but couldn't get through until the walls came down. Every emotional wound that you processed, every grief you truly felt, every fear you faced head on instead of running from it, left a mark on your frequency. And that frequency is what people hear when you speak. They hear your willingness to feel. They hear your ability to hold pain without being destroyed by it. They hear someone who has been through the fire and come out intact, not because you avoided the heat, but because you walked straight through it. This is why your voice hypnotized, not because of any special technique, not because you learned to modulate your tone in some specific way, But because people who are exhausted by their own performance, tired of pretending, worn out by the constant effort of maintaining their image, they hear something in you that gives them permission to stop. They hear permission to put down the weight they've been carrying. Let me be even more specific about what's happening when they hear you. Your voice creates a frequency that interacts with their nervous system. Yeah, it bypasses their thinking mind, their analysis, their critical faculty. It goes directly to the part of them that knows what is true. That's why they cannot explain it. That's why they say something like, I don't know what it is about your voice, but I feel different when you talk. They are not being vague. They are being accurate. They genuinely cannot intellectualize what's happening because it's not an intellectual experience. Have you ever been in a room with someone who just radiated calm? Not someone who was trying to be calm, not someone who was performing serenity, but someone who actually carried a quality of stillness that you could feel in your body. That's what it's like for people when you speak. You are not doing anything to them. You are just being yourself. But yourself at this level of integration is a rare thing that people desperately need to encounter. Here's what else people will tell you when they try to explain what's happening. They will say that your voice sounds like it knows something, not in a pretentious way, not in a way that suggests you are better than anyone else, but in a way that suggests you have been to the bottom and returned with something real. Your voice doesn't have the nervous energy of someone trying to prove themselves. It has the settled quality of someone who has nothing to prove. Nothing, absolutely nothing to prove. This matters more than you know. In a world where everyone is performing, everyone is building their personal brand, everyone is selling something, the sound of someone who is just present is revolutionary. Revolutionary, yeah. It's so unusual that people literally don't know what to do with it. They cannot categorize it. They cannot dismiss it. They cannot pretend they didn't feel it. And the unthinkable part is that you didn't play any of this. You didn't set out to develop a voice that disarms people. You didn't study techniques or learn formulas. You just survived. You just kept going. You just stayed committed to your own growth, even when it was hard. And that journey transformed something fundamental about how you show up in the world. And people sense that you have paid your dues. They sense that you have put in the work. They sense that you can be trusted because you've made mistakes and learned from them instead of trying to hide them. All of that contributes to why your voice has the power it has. This is the part where some people get confused. They hear that their voice hypnotizes others, and they think it means they can control people. They think they can get people to agree with them, to follow them, to do what they want. And sure, yeah, There might be people who try to use this quality that way. There have always been manipulators who figure out how to exploit other people's openness. But that's not what's happening here. That's not what any of this is about. This quality of your voice comes from its purity, from its refusal to manipulate, from the fact that it's not trying to get something. It's just offering something. That's it. And that's the only way it works. The moment you try to use it to control, you lose it. Because the control impulse introduces a tension that immediately changes your frequency. People can feel it. They might not be able to name it, but they will instinctively pull back, protect themselves, create distance. So don't get caught up in thinking about what your voice can do for you. Don't start analyzing how to use it to advance your career or impress your romantic interest or get your way in conversations. That's the fastest way to lose the very thing that's so unusual about you. Instead, just let be what it already is. Let it flow through you without you getting in the way. Let it connect to people, to themselves, without you trying to manage the process. This is the deeper truth about your voice. It works because you are not attached to how people respond to it. You are not measuring your worth by whether they seem affected. You are not looking for validation in their reaction. You are just speaking from the place of truth you have discovered inside yourself. And if that helps someone else, it's good. Good. If it doesn't, also good. Yeah. There is nothing for you to hold onto. That kind of non-attachment is what creates this kind of effect. Because people who are used to being around people who want something from them, who are used to being manipulated, persuaded, convinced, they suddenly encounter someone who doesn't seem to want anything. And that disorients them, in the deepest possible way. It forces them to drop their defenses because there is nothing to defend against. And they are talking about your voice. They are talking about how it sounds. They are talking about the unusual quality that makes them feel something they cannot explain. But what they are really talking about is the part of you that's finally visible, finally audible, finally in the world where it can do what it was always meant to do. Not for your ego, not for your reputation, but because something in them was waiting for you to speak. And that's the part of you need to hold onto when the insecurity surfaces, when the doubts creep in, when you wonder if you are just making all of this up. You are not making it up. It's real. It's happening. People are experiencing something through your voice that they rarely experience anywhere else. And that's not because you are special in the way the world usually defines specialness. It's because you did the unglamorous work, the inner work, the work that nobody sees and nobody applauds. And that work has been waiting to be heard. So let your beautiful voice do what it does. Stop checking to see if people are listening. Stop measuring whether you're having the right effect. Just trust that the frequency that's coming through you is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Trust that the people who need to hear it will hear it. Trust that you don't need to force anything, convince anyone, or perform anything. They are talking about your voice because they cannot help it. It's unusual. It's unexpected. It's your truth. It's doing something they didn't think was possible. And you are just sitting there having a conversation wondering why everyone seems so affected. You don't even know what you are doing. And that's exactly why it works. That's exactly the point.